Hey there, folks. Brandon here. Just to let you know that we actually recorded this episode ages ago, in late 2023 when Shin Kamen Rider first came out on Amazon Prime Video. This is still a very good episode though, and that means you're in luck because now you know it's on Amazon Prime. And since then, the Blu-ray version became available in late 2024, so there are lots of ways for you to watch this ahead of time if you don't like spoilers. But you can also just listen to us first. I promise this episode is good. Thanks, and enjoy this fresh new episode of Righteous Kicks.
And for a whole lot of them, happiness was murder.
Murder or, subjugation, murder, and...
More murder.
More murder.
At least half of those guys were in it for the murder.
Right. I mean, because, you can't be unhappy if you're dead.
Welcome to the Skiffy and Fantasy Show's Righteous Kicks, the podcast where two science fiction writers geek out about men in spandex bodysuits who kick evildoers to death in abandoned quarries until they explode.
And then they go into the bathroom and have a little breakdown about it.
Oh god. I'm Brandon.
I'm Iori.
And today we have a lot of feelings about Shin Kamen Rider, and this time we're joined by a guest, Hugo-nominated author and editor Jennifer Brozek. Say hello to everyone, Jennifer.
Hello, it's nice to meet you. Or hear, I know Brandon, but it's nice to meet you.
A pleasure.
Jen is here because I bullied her into watching Shin Kamen Rider when it became available on Amazon Prime Video. Because if you've been listening to this podcast for a great long time, you know how eager I am to share Kamen Rider with other people and how difficult it is to get people into the thing. So as soon as the movie came out, I was very excited to share it with other people. It is still available for you to watch right now on Amazon Prime Video. So we are very excited to share all of our feelings about this very weird movie. But we should perhaps begin by describing the movie. So Iori, would you like to tell people what Shin Kamen Rider is about?
Well, Anno Hideaki, after finishing the rebuild of Evangelion, was like, I have time on my hands. Should I go on vacation? Should I take my wife to the Bahamas? No! I'm going to reboot Kamen Rider. So, this is a reimagining of the original first rider, Hongo Takeshi, from our very first series back in the Showa era, now brought into modern times, a little edgier, a little sexier, a little less, Nazi connotations in our villains. We've just written that out of our history. Okay, I guess. So, the movie opens with Hongo jailbreaking himself out of Shocker headquarters. We rendezvous with Hongo, Luriko, and Luriko's father, Dr. Midorikawa, who did very much do all the fun genetic splicing to turn Hongo into a half batta. Brandon, I just fucking forgot how to say batta in English.
Grasshopper.
Fuck, I'm going to take that entire line again and I'm so sorry. So, Hongo, Luriko, who, by the way, the thing I most want to know about Anno Hideaki is who in his life had that haircut that has left him with some kind of just compulsion. Hongo and Luriko escape from Shocker headquarters, rendezvous with Luriko's father, Dr. Midorikawa, who is responsible for Hongo now being half grasshopper. Hongo gets iced immediately by the spider og, and this sets Hongo and Luriko off on their little journey. They were already going to try to take down Shocker. But now we have been explicitly charged with a mission, and oh, whoops, here's the government, and they want to get in on it too. This makes things bad, as the government does.
Indeed.
We then go through a series of fighting more various insect-human hybrids from Shocker in an episodic format that sort of mimics the original series but is not super properly suited to a feature film. We meet Ichimonji Hayato, who, I have to say, The tall friend, small friend dynamic is a favorite of mine, and it is particularly choice here. When we are meeting Ichimonji, we unfortunately do lose Yuriko, who gets totally iced by the KK Og.
Mm-hmm.
So, our boys, who are now calling themselves the Double Riders, go back into Shocker headquarters to fight Luriko's older brother, Ichiro. And, they win. Hongo just goes full Jesus in the process and sacrifices himself for the rest of humanity. And Ichimonji gets to keep an upgraded helmet that has the remains of Hongo's soul inside it. So now, instead of tall friend, small friend, it's my friend is in my brain. And we get to ride off into the sunset.
Mm-hmm. And that does not at all sound like either a very confusing movie or a movie only Hideaki Anno can make.
I don't find it that confusing. I do think maybe we could have stood to pack a few less characters into a movie with only a 2-hour runtime.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we didn't need every single one of those Shocker executives.
Yeah. But I'm very curious, Jen, what were your overall thoughts about the movie before we get into some of the nitty-gritty stuff? In general.
Okay, so...
Did you enjoy it and why?
Well, I was warned that this was based on a manga, and I do read some mangas from time to time. Overall, I didn't particularly like it, but I found it satisfying. And I have very different points of view. If I was just a viewer, there's some thoughts, but as a writer and an editor, the storytelling had some very interesting things to it that I liked. And I know that's because I'm an American and this is Japanese, right?
Yes.
The Japanese storytelling is the what's important to the culture is way different than Americans, and I found that absolutely fascinating. And in the end, I thought that the whole story was satisfying, even if I have issues. I have volumes. I have periodicals about this. So.
Well, so do we.
Well, this is how we
frank.
usually feel about Kamen Rider, so.
So I think a good place to start, perhaps, would be to ask you just about one of those issues. What was one of the things that bothered you in particular? And I guess we could start with a thing that bothers all of us for different reasons, but I know because, Jen, you mentioned this to me when we met at Gen Con, which is...
Jen has her own convention?
Oh, God.
Is that a serious question, or are you joking?
I'm joking.
Okay, good, because my aunt actually asked me, what do you do at a convention for Jennifers?
That's a thing that we now need to do.
I mean,
but
that's just that Sarah Pinsker story, right?
Oh, yes. Yes, it is. That one, I just read that.
And then there was N-1.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Send that one to your aunt.
Yes, but that was
Lord.
like 7 years ago. But she was serious. Okay, so which thing did you...
So, the thing that I wanted to ask you... the thing that we're going to start talking about is our feelings about Shocker as an organization. Because a lot of us have very different feelings based on where we're coming into the story, and I want to get your perspective first as someone who, again, is experiencing Kamen Rider for the first time through this movie. How did you feel about Shocker in this movie?
So overall, I actually felt that the villain had a very interesting motivation to me, because the motivation was, as I understood it, was to bring happiness to humanity. But it was set off by a human and then given to an artificial intelligence who had no concept of what happiness actually was. And then, thus, the definition of happiness ended up going into what each different Og thought happiness would be. Subjugation, death, alternate reality where apparently you can't lie. The fact that it's kind of the road to hell is paved with good intentions. That is this here. And I found that very interesting. It was, nobody wakes up one day and says, I'm going to be the bad guy. I'm just going to be evil today. No, they say, I have a specific goal. And there is this slope of what they are willing to do to achieve that goal. And that is where, we've got the villain, the AI who has this bot servant who,
Mm-hmm.
well, I guess wants to be human.
Well, I think it's his body, sort of.
Well, they were talking to each other as
There
individuals.
were two different AIs, and honestly, I did not always feel that they were appropriately differentiated.
Well, there was one with the one with the physical body, and then there was the one with the digital
And the
body.
flowers.
So
Mhm.
the physical bodied one seemed to want to become human, or they were trying to understand what it was to be human to give that information to the digital one. And I think the definition of happiness is the crux of what makes this evil, because one person's happiness could be another person's idea of hell. For example, I am an introvert. The idea of, oh, I don't know, going to a crowded place or parties all the time is just like, that's not me. I would rather have 2 or 3 people in a room and have either intense conversations or utterly frivolous conversations, or play a game where it's a small group, where some people thrive on absolutely giant crowds, lots of noise. And so each one of the extrovert and the introvert, yet their idea of happiness they're diametrically opposed. So how would you bring happiness to all of humanity? Now, that's my interesting thing. I found that motivation incredibly interesting. But then he let his executives choose what happiness meant.
Mm-hmm.
And for a whole lot of them, happiness was murder.
Murder,
Yeah.
or, subjugation, murder, and
More murder.
more murder.
Like, at least half of those guys were in it for the murder.
Right. I mean, because, well, you can't be unhappy if you're dead. Except, here's the thing, and this is depending on where you are in the world and what your view of the afterlife is. I mean, if you're dead, you may be very unhappy, or you may be very happy, or you may be nothing. So
The thing that I found, like, curiously kind of frustrating about the way that Shocker is applied here, and we'll talk more about some of the other reasons why it frustrates me, because in Anno's work, this is a kind of through line that I feel was kind of dropped in this movie compared to some of his other work. But in particular, one of the reasons why it felt like a really cool idea that was not being explored to its full potential is the idea that all of these orgs were perfectly fine admitting that the work that I do has the potential to make hundreds of other people happy. But the thing that makes me happy is doing it. Even if allowing myself to continue doing it means I must, in fact, make this other person suffer so I can continue to be happy. At that point, you're not caring about other people's happiness. Like, when we meet the Bat Org, if that was the Bat Org, right? That tries to kill Ruiko very early in the movie and fails.
Yeah. That's after Spider. That's the first one we get. It's the first one we go for after we team up with the government.
Mm-hmm. And he's a very interesting character overall because he's a very talented scientist who is almost uniquely obsessed by the goal of fulfilling his, like, great scientific opus, to the point where that makes him simultaneously very obsessed with Ruiko and proving that he can defeat Ruiko once and for all. But then he has no problem admitting, yeah, I'm very good at making what is essentially poison. I'm good at it because it reveals things about the human body that will reveal things about being happy, but also so I can kill the people who don't want me to do poison, because doing poison makes me happy. That's not... Both of those things are kind of incongruent, but the fact that they keep making...
I will be 100% real about this. Pacing-wise, I think we could have cut Komoy that Og.
yeah.
Like,
I mean, yeah.
in terms of sheer pacing, he was not necessary to set things up.
There
We
are
didn't
two
even
orgs...
need to see what happened with Scorpion on screen. We could have taken it for granted, like, the government agents have shown up with her already neutralized.
Bat and Scorpion Org are the two characters that if you remove them from the movie would arguably not only be not as long as it is, but better. And we'll get to Scorpion Org in a minute.
Yeah.
But, yeah, like, I felt it was interesting but strange to have characters admit that ultimately the thing that they're still driven by is their own happiness and that they're making excuses for continuing to do this work. But I was like, I want you to explain this to me. I want to feel like I am understanding why you were here in the first place. And I felt like I didn't get a lot of that, and that is obviously a kind of bias because, again, having watched stuff like Neon Genesis Evangelion, I feel like I understand a part of Anno's frustration with what is ultimately a kind of social complication that gets in the way of people finding their own value in the world instead of being in groups of people that lead them to believe that you need to commit mass murder in order to find value and spirituality. But I felt like it kind of stopped short there, and I wanted to see what the movie would have done if it continued fleshing that out.
So, like, I am just not capable of divorcing this iteration of Shocker from its previous incarnations. And that means that my interpretation of it is always going to be colored by that, right? Mm-hmm. So, for Jen and also anyone in the audience who is not familiar with it, the original Shocker was, A of all, like, very explicitly and clearly a terrorist organization, but second of B, very explicitly Nazis.
Oh.
To the point where in episode 7 of the original television series...
Oh, fuck.
They literally have to save... They literally have to save a former Japanese general and war criminal from Shaka because two Shaka agents believe that he is the only living person who can identify Hitler's secret treasure hidden on the island.
Oh, lordy.
Oh, and how can we forget Starfish Hitler?
Oh yeah, Starfish Hitler was also a thing that happened, not in the original series, that happened in X-Rider, I think? That was like several years afterward, but yes. Suffice it to say that speaking very starkly about Nazism is a thing about the original franchise for which a lot of people strongly adore the first
and
shows.
And it was very much sort of an act of, I almost want to say, well, I mean, historical revisionism in a corrective way, like, because, oops, we sided with the Nazis, oops, a thing for which we persistently, as a government, fail to apologize for sufficiently or make amends for. We needed to show in media a Japanese hero standing up against Nazis. Like, this is our way of going, oh, nope, definitely on the right side here. Definitely standing up for justice. And so, because there is that bit of, like, image cleanup that I'm always going to associate with the original take on Shocker and Hongo, this is, it's a little jarring to have Shocker still using that same eagle logo, just divorced from everything else Nazi.
I thought that looked a bit Nazi-ish. I was just like, that's an interesting...
No, it's a very stark image.
I recently went to a Kamen Rider exhibition that had costumes and models and stuff from every series. They had 2 mannequins wearing Shocker uniforms. The Shocker mannequins were Hyling.
Oh,
and people were taking photos with them also Hyling.
Why?
Yeah, the franchise as a whole is not very good about not romanticizing the image in the same way a lot of other franchises are. I think people have this conversation about Star Wars maybe once every
Constantly.
6 years.
Oh no, more frequent than that. Like, the Stormtroopers and Hugo Boss design for the Nazis discourse comes up like every 6 months on Tumblr.
Mm-hmm.
I see that one on my dash regularly. I can set my watch by it.
No, and I mean, Kamen Rider is also very bad about it because they acknowledge that sometimes Shaka iconography is cool. Like 4 years ago, they were selling literal bicycles that had Shocker logos on them, and I was like, why would you sell this to a child? Why would that child ride an evil bike?
Wait, have you seen the cutesy Shocker merch? Where, like, there's a chibified version of the low-level grunts, just going around doing their little goofy thing?
Yeah.
Nope.
I've seen those.
Small, fluffy, cute Nazis. But,
So, like, another part of the thing, another part of what complicates Shaka, and I'm gonna open the floor for Iori to add more flavor to this as well, is that because we're familiar with Anno Hideaki's work, and especially Evangelion, we're aware of how strongly he feels about cults.
Yes. There was a huge problem, like, in the 90s, especially with Shinrikyo literally appropriating Evangelion into their manga and trying to use parts of it to inform their mythology and, violating his copyright all over the place. And he was justifiably incredibly upset by it because I think this happened before the sarin gas attacks in 1995.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was about to ask you if he was for or against, but...
Super duper against.
Yeah.
Also, so another reason that I'm kind of disappointed with this take on Shocker is that the advertising around this movie really led me to believe that it was going to be a movie about cults as opposed to a movie that has a cult in it. Those are different things.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that this would be like Anno Hideaki fully claws out, going after and going after Happy Science, which is a much bigger cult these days.
Happy Science?
And Happy Science is another... Okay, so, Jen, a thing you might not be familiar with is that we got a pretty bad cult problem in Japan since...
This is new to me. So.
Post-World War II, because we no longer had a state religion after the Americans rewrote our constitution, which it's good not to have a state religion. I am 100% in favor of not having state religions.
I am as well. Lord knows that right now they're trying...
It did create this pretty weird atmosphere in which a lot of people started trying to distance themselves from Shinto and the way Shinto had been weaponized during World War II. This also coincided with the New Age boom in the West, and these things fed into each other and created this environment where suddenly people were popping up a lot of little tiny cults where, oh yeah, this guy thinks he's Jesus and that Jesus is actually Buddhist, and okay, this guy channels historical figures.
Is this the time
Sometimes historical figures who are not dead.
This guy is Buddha reincarnated, and they all had their own little things of a few thousand people. Happy Science is estimated at, I want to say, 30K right now,
Wow.
and the leader was an incarnation of a supreme being from Venus, he said. Another thing that you need to realize about Japan is we have lots and lots of political parties, and several of these cults decided to start their own political parties.
Or have strong relationships with the ones that have historically always existed.
So the fastest way to explain Happy Science, I think, is like Scientology, but smaller with a better PR department? Barely.
Yeah.
Okay, I got that. I think I understand the analogy.
They're a lighter Scientology.
The current Scientology can be a little bit deadly.
I mean, you say that. Happy Science agents once attempted to assassinate the leader of Shinrikyo.
Okay.
So yeah, it's the same Coca-Cola, but they taste different in different countries. So yes. So like, knowing what we know about Anno and Anno's relationship to like having that conversation in his media, like one of the things that we would have, at least I would have liked to see in the movie is, what does it take to get somebody in the position where they are committed to performing this kind of thing as a member of Shaka?
Oh,
and thinking that they're the good guy? And what does it take to get them out of that? And I feel like there is a lot of the beginnings of that. Like, I get why these people think that they're doing the right thing before they start poisoning people, but I want to know why they're still here.
So, one of my major complaints about this movie was that I felt that Shocker wasn't adequately contextualized within society. Like, we do not see the cult interact with society and therefore don't understand the social and political and economic pressures that have led people to join this cult.
I think that was
Except we do get a tiny bit of his backstory when the government agents meet Luriko and Hongo, if you just pause on that document shuffle and then take it frame by frame, what you actually find out is that a majority of the members are abducted and brainwashed instead of voluntarily joining up, which, okay, fine. If that's how we want to play it, I'm cool with that. I wish that this information had been given to me in a format that I didn't need to freeze frame and then just, quietly right arrow my way through it.
That might have been an editing thing, because one of the things that I noticed in the theme of this movie was on the good guy side was to be happy is to be working with other people. There was this whole thing where if you became iconoclastic, you either died or you were miserable. Ryuko was like, she was basically miserable until she actually linked up with Hongo. The second, Ichimonji, he was basically, by the end, he was like, oh, damn, I'm alone again. And then he wasn't. And I think that was on purpose, was showing that Shocker was not part of society, whereas all the good guys, if they were not part of society and not working together, they were miserable. And it links into that whole happiness thing. And that was one of the things I thought, it's like, that's actually really interesting, because in the West, you want to be iconoclastic, even though heroes get people dead. It's just one of those things that I think it was done on purpose, and I think there might have been some sort of exposition explaining, especially if you're shuffling and you show that, there might have been some exposition saying that all these people who are working for Shocker have been kidnapped and brainwashed. But
so this was a thing that I thought was particularly interesting, and I like this a lot as well, and one of the things that I attach deeply to the movie, because when we meet Hiromi, the Wasp Org, the very first thing that we learn about her and her entire compound is that she's psychically connected to thousands of people who essentially are willing to give up their consciousness and their very life to be a part of the hive of her close trusted allies. But they don't have any consciousness as a result. We only hear one of said allies speak. And even he is willing to literally give up his life to provide more energy for her to fight.
Well, Hiromi says...
Yeah, but they're all listening to the brainwashing radio.
And
so
Hiromi
I don't
says
think that counts as informed consent.
Yeah, she says subjugation is happiness. They want to be subjugated. I remember certain key phrases, and I also, Hiromi, the interesting thing with her, she wanted her best friend to kill her. She wanted Ruri to kill her. And I didn't understand that. And I don't know if that's a cultural thing I didn't understand, or it was just part of the story.
Have you ever had, usually I think this happens to most people in high school, that one really, borderline toxic, codependent same-sex friendship where you look back 15 years later and you're like, oh, I was absolutely gay for that person. It might have been mutual. We were both just super unhealthy about it.
I don't know if
I think that basically Hiromi and Ruriko just haven't had enough distance to grow up and realize that about themselves.
I had the frenemy who I adored, but also hated at the same time. And then later, 10 years later, I found out she adored me, but she was also always jealous and intimidated, which was really weird because she was the popular one.
Yeah, that's what that's the scene we're describing here, to the letter. Because I think the thing that I read deeply about that scene, because the dynamic between Hiromi and Ruriko is perhaps the most interesting two-character interplay in the entire movie.
Absolutely.
And I wish most of the movie was that, in hindsight. Because the thing that I adored, the thing that I think I got from that scene and adored as a result is Hiromi's major frustration is, Ruriko could be here, in Shaka, living it up. We don't even want to brainwash you. We want you to want to be here. And Ruriko is like, no. And the reason why I don't want to be here is, look around you. You don't know if any of these other people would have wanted to be here if they had the choice. It's like, okay, well, if you're not going to be here, then at least you should have the guts to kill me. Because I'm gonna fight. I'm mad now. We're gonna fight. And I don't want this guy to do it, because I've never met him before.
Yep.
And I get that. All of that. I love that, and I wish. While this is like just again a bias that I have, in another movie, it would have been much cooler for Ruriko to fight Hiromi with nothing and still win. And I get that ultimately that's what happens here because Hongo is just a tool for Ruriko to use in this scene ultimately. But it would have been cool for her to have that moment by herself, especially because the real heartbreaking moment at the end of that is we learn that because the Wasp Org is so powerful, the secret agents that have been working with us with our heroes the entire time went behind their backs, killed Scorpion Org, and extracted poison from her body with the deliberate intention of killing Wasp Org. And Ruriko watches Wasp Org get shot and goes, I know we wanted to do this, but this still feels scummy, and I don't like it.
Of course, I also wonder why they didn't, just use sharpshooters going forward because they had Scorpion Og's blood. But, plot holes.
Sometimes
yeah, but then we wouldn't get to really rad fight scenes, right? Honestly, okay, I will be 100% honest and say I did not feel that a lot of the fight scenes were actually sufficiently rad.
No, I didn't. I mean, I loved John Wick up until John Wick 4, where every fight sequence was about 2 times too long. But the fight sequences in this one, they had too many cuts, which basically showed the wire fu to it. And also, the after effects with the blood were just gratuitous splatter. And that didn't excite me.
My complaint is that a bunch of the complicated stuff with the jumps and somersaults and stuff was CGI'd, and no, this is a fucking tokusatsu. Tokusatsu is practical effects. I do not want to see a guy do a 60-foot vertical leap, somersault 16 times, and then kick a guy. I want to see a guy on wires do a 10-foot vertical leap, somersault twice, and then kick a guy.
Exactly.
So I feel like I want to clarify by saying I'm not just saying this to be contrarian. But ultimately, I think, while it is still not the best, while I'm sure there are far older things that I've seen that will excite me a great deal more in their fight scenes than this, I still adored a lot of the fighting in this movie for 2 reasons. That is really just one reason, but there are 2 reasons. One, I really liked a lot of the blood in this movie because it qualifies a thing that has been true in the original Kamen Rider series and hasn't been true in any other series in the franchise since, which is, this person is no longer human and therefore can no longer control how powerful they are. So it was kind of fun to see what is on camera, what looks like an ordinary, not very flashy kick, send a guy 8 foot upwards and backwards into a tree where both of his arms collapse against the tree and he just turns into a pool of red jam, was kind of fun for me. But the thing that I also really liked, especially about the CGI, which again is a thing that I only know because I've consumed a lot of Ano Hideaki's work, is that mostly to his detriment, but I'm still going to give him the benefit of the doubt. Ano cares a lot about making live-action media move like anime as much as possible. In the early 2000s, he directed a Cutie Honey reboot that tries to do a lot of those same kinds of effects in camera, and as a result, it looks very weird and off-putting for a lot of people, because he's trying to replicate like Showa era squashing techniques that that have been accustomed in most hand-drawn animation, with a body that is actually moving in front of the camera. And while it's not a very pretty movie to look at, it is a very stylistic movie, and I enjoy it a lot as a result. And I feel like Ano's decision in Shin Kamen Rider was, now that CGI has gotten to the point where you can do a lot of very detailed things with it, what if we did very detailed things? And the only reason why that's not ultimately a very good thing is because, as Iori says, being an adaptation of tokusatsu, we would have liked to see more toku. Like, the driving scene that opens the movie, where the 2 trucks fall off the cliff is really just two miniature trucks on a miniature soundstage falling onto a high-def camera. That's also rad. But while I don't think the CGI is less rad, it's not for this moment in time. Like, if Anno was making an adaptation of Cyborg 009, I would have appreciated it a great deal. But I still like it because it's Anno saying, I want to make these creatures who are not human, ultimately, do non-human things as much as possible. Because that's what's cool for me.
Mm-hmm.
Anno is a nerd at heart, and I adore that he's making the things that he makes because they delight him, ultimately. And sometimes I will just see a thing and go, I see that you're being a nerd right now. I'm gonna take that. I'm gonna accept that as it is.
Did you read the manga for this? Either of you?
The manga for this is actually a very weird... So there is a manga that this is based on, but the movie is most directly adapting the original 1971 TV series.
I mean,
precisely because the manga is weirder and more violent than this is, in ways that have never been published by its original creator, Shotaro Ishinomori. Because at the time, Ishinomori was doing children's television, and people saw him pitch this manga and was like, homie, this is a lot. So many things are happening. The original manga, if I recall correctly, opens with that protagonist witnessing his entire family die bloodily by terrorist attack. Well, it's like a lot.
The reason I ask this is because as a writer and a storyteller, fight scenes need to have emotional resonance and emotional beat. In a graphic novel, that's still true, but it's also less true. And one of the main problems I had with this movie's fights were there were very few emotional beats. In fact, only the last fight actually had an emotional payoff and earned the leveling up of the villain to the next level. And otherwise, they were soulless fights. They were just there as placeholders to me. And I was wondering if that was an artifact of the manga or even the original TV series.
I think it's very much an artifact of the TV series Monster of the Week format.
Okay.
These guys are here because they need to be here because they're stepping stones on the way to the big bad.
I would actually say that this is a byproduct of it having to be a movie, because the movie loses a thing that is very important to at least the first 8-ish episodes of the original series, which is a thing that the movie mentions, a thing that you hear Hongo have a lot of feelings about before the first fight and then never have feelings about again, which is the personal tragedy of the imagined loss of one's humanity.
Well, that's repeated through the government people. He's too soft. He's too soft. That's his strength and his weakness.
Yeah, and I like that in the movie, because I feel like a lot of how the movie is written is also an attempt to purposely distance itself from the series concern, because in the series, Hongo immediately... the series opens more or less the exact same way that the movie does. Dr. Midorikawa saves Hongo from being brainwashed, confesses his part in the attempt to turn him into a cyborg in the first place, seeks remorse, and dies. And then Hongo is like, I'm not human anymore, and that is frightening and ruinous to me, so I'm going to use this power specifically to destroy Shaka as an act of vengeance for robbing me of my humanity. And that eventually gets washed away in the series, but at least it was an overtly stated concern, and as a result, most of his fights are just him essentially looking something that he considers inhuman in the face and going, I am destroying you for what you have done to me. But in the movie, that happens, and then everybody goes out of their way to qualify to themselves that his strong emotional connection to defeating Shaka because it is the right thing to do is an act of softness that is ultimately human and makes him more human than everyone else. And that's cool. I like that. In part because being a cyborg sounds rad, and I don't think that that depletes me of any humanity whatsoever. But as a result, a lot of those fights are just the evil guys are looking for us. They're here now. I guess we need to fight for our lives. And it doesn't feel like anything more is happening in this
There's
moment.
no emotional beats.
Except for Ruriko and Midori.
Mm-hmm.
And that's still a fight that Hongo has on her behalf. And the fight with Ichiro,
Mm-hmm.
which is Ichiro having an opinion about the world, and Ichimonji saying loudly, we don't agree with your opinion, while Hongo punches things. Both of which, I think, very emotionally powerful fights.
Those are the only emotional fights to me.
Yeah, but everything else, like KK-Og is a particularly bothersome part for that reason, because he's an assassin, and he arrives once, kills one person, gets beat up off screen, while we watch Ruriko die. And I'm supposed to be feeling a lot about the fact that the emotional beat that the camera is focusing on is, this is the one time Hongo can't actually do anything, because Ichimonji had gotten in the way and only just learned that this is the wrong thing to do. And we're watching him struggle with this feeling. It's like, I feel like there's another way that I could have had this emotional beat. I feel like something about this feels hollow instead of actually.
To me, it felt
really
like fridging the girlfriend to do emotions, because the second writer,
Ichimonji,
his main motivation was he's paying Missy back for he is going to help Hongo because.
Yeah, he's doing the right thing because he's now learned that it's the right thing
because
to do.
Because he's been freed from his brainwashing. And
yeah, but meanwhile, Ruriko is already dying. It's like...
And Ryuko, but she planned for this. And part of me is like, okay, it's not so much fridging as she expected to die. I don't know, I still don't like it. It's still using her specific death to motivate both main male characters.
Yeah, and it's also noteworthy in the movie because in the original series, Ruriko does not die.
This would have been a better movie if Ruriko had been allowed to participate in that final fight against her brother.
Yes, absolutely.
And, like, if the thing with her brother then became a mutually assured destruction scenario, in that case I would actually be okay with her dying.
Instead, she is now a prisoner somewhere safe. What's left of her soul. That bothers me.
Because
her remaining prana is now just in a government facility.
Safe.
That's not gonna go wrong in any possible way.
I mean, is it digital? God. Is it a digital thing? Is it going to? I can see some great future stories where she ends up becoming the bad guy by merging with the AI.
She's going to be the villain in the next movie because the government decides to develop their own AI and uses her as the base.
Exactly. And
I like that I just wanna idly interject to say, I like that this is a thought that you both have had, because this is the first time that I've opened the Wikipedia page for the movie and looked at it, since it was announced in Japan, and I'm only now seeing that apparently in April of this year, Anna was like, if Toei let me make another movie, I would.
I mean, there's definitely room to grow as a movie franchise.
There's sequel bait in there.
A serious sequel bait. But the way every single female character in this movie ended is, I almost want to say disrespectful, because Scorpion was basically killed off screen after she was shown to be completely insane and kind of slutty. The Wasp-Ak, she literally just got shot by a no-named government person, as in a Deus Ex Machina.
Yeah, okay, we didn't know his name was Taki then.
At that time, fair. We did not. Yeah. He literally walked in, and it was like the author's characters rebelled, and he's like, well, the author's like, well, hell, I will have to. The government uses this. They walk in and shoot, because I'm not going to make I like this scene that I've written. And then she dies, but she's not completely dead. She's part of her soul is digitally somewhere safe.
Yeah,
nowhere controlled by the government is safe.
Yeah,
it's not very cool. Like when you say that scene aloud, Hiromi's death is actually really upsetting. Like, imagine you are trying to settle a year-long beef with your best friend, and then your best friend's friend enters the room and fights for her, and then just when you decide that you have finally lost and would like to be put out of your misery, a complete stranger appears off screen.
Or basically dad comes off screen and shoots her. Or grounds to
Yeah,
or whatever. It's so unsatisfying. That was very unsatisfying to me because it left so many emotional points between the two women open. And that also had a triangular thing with Hongo because Hongo's like, no, I'm going to keep you from having to do this thing. I don't want to have to kill Riri's
Hiromi.
best friend. And it's just, this is the part where I really did not like this movie. I mean, ending was kind of satisfying. I liked the storytelling. I liked the different themes, but it could have been so much better.
I want to... Iori, did you watch Shin Kamen Rider in a theater, or...
I mean, yeah, the first time I saw it, it was in theater, like the early screening on opening days, so that I got to see the press conference beforehand. Unfortunately, I had seat right in the front row, but way over to the right. So the first time I saw the movie was from just a very bad angle.
Oh, wow.
So, that means you're the only person who can answer this very awkward question, which is, what was the experience of being in a room full of other people during the Scorpion Org fight?
During that fight, I was just very focused on slurping down my mojito and trying not to look at any of the men around me and how they were reacting to it. Because, especially because the front row is all recliners. So I was having a very cushy experience, and I did not want that experience to be, disrupted by turning my head and finding out that someone had a stiffy. I'm sorry.
It's just not, can't somebody just die? Can't a woman just die in a piece of media?
Without having to be weirdly sexual about murdering people first?
Yep.
Without dying very sexually. It just... so much of that. I don't trust anybody who tells me that the Scorpion Org fight was their favorite scene in the movie.
Well, there's
I've met such people.
There's this whole Madonna whore complex between the Scorpion Org and the scientist's daughter. The whole point of her relationship with Hongo, who she's only discovered that she's happy working with him. There was no sexual tension. There was no sexual anything. She just realized she felt happy working with him. She felt safe. But it was a very Madonna whore kind of thing. And her best friend was basically, she's beautiful, but she's pretty much asexual. The way that they presented her, she was fully clothed. She was beautiful without being sexualized. She was very attractive in that way. Whereas the scientist's daughter was very masculinely dressed, even though the coat gave her the kind of a dress form, but she wore all black. So every woman in this that actually took a point, they were a victim, they were a Madonna, they were whore, or they had no sex at all. And then they were killed just kind of very offhandedly, which is, I mean, it did pass the Bechdel test, but it was not good to any of the women characters.
Yeah, which is
It's
ultimately
still
very
better
frustrating.
than Kiva.
Oh my god, that's a conversation that folks will hear on the podcast very soon, which is saying a lot.
It did miles better than Hutotante.
Well,
Indeed.
My bar's in hell. My bar is in hell, guys. Ooh.
Your what is in hell?
My bar is in hell.
Yeah, the franchise this franchise, and we're telling you this because this is your first time that you've encountered any Kamen Rider, but it's such a joke it's such an inside joke in the fandom how poorly the franchise treats women that there is a YouTube video. There's a YouTube video on that is still available to view right now of just the number of times a woman has attempted to transform into the lead Kamen Rider of a show and experienced great pain or harm by trying.
Oh, that's kind of like Dune, where the quiz at Haderach is the place that no women could go. Yeah, no. Okay.
It's getting better, to be fair. I'm not trying to rag on this thing or the fandom. It's getting a lot better. In fact,
Shout
I'm
out to
hopeful.
Geets!
Yeah, I'm actually kind of hopeful that the series that just premiered in Japan a couple of weeks ago, Kamen Rider Gotchard, will have its first female secondary rider that is revealed not to be an enemy of the protagonist or not to be a member of a cast of heroes that all don't trust each other. So I'm very excited to see that happen, if that happens later on in this series. But yes, sometimes the franchise is bad, and a lot of my feelings about this movie in relationship to its treatment of women is that none of those things needed to happen, very obviously. And the way that we kill Wasborg is its own thing. I want to believe that Anno constructed that because he had an idea for the flow of the story in his brain and didn't know how to get to that point otherwise. I still think it didn't need to happen. The Scorpion Org fight didn't need to happen.
Not on screen.
All. And my major frustration with killing Ruriko is alive for the entire duration of the original series. Only there are two fundamental changes to the overall story of the movie compared to the series, and it's the fact that Ruriko dies, and it's the fact that we meet Ichimonji before he is converted to a hero.
Oh.
One of those things is a fundamentally good story decision that I'm glad happened. The other just sucks. Both of them happen at the same time. Why?
We need to clarify that the reason that Ichimonji is even a thing at all is because during the filming of the original Kamen Rider TV series back in the 70s, the actor playing Hongo broke his leg in a motorcycle accident and couldn't film.
Oh dear.
So it's like, oh shit, we need a new hero stat. So they temporarily wrote Hongo out of the show by sending him and Ruriko to Europe to hunt Shocker there and brought in Ichimonji as their new protagonist.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
And that is also actually why Hongo's leg is broken in that fight with Ichimonji. It is a nod to how we got the guy in the first place.
He broke both legs, if I remember correctly.
No, it was just one. It was just the left, if I recall correctly.
Okay.
I only
Got
remember
turned
because
all the way around.
Yeah, I like that scene is seared in my brain. Again, I like the fight scene in this movie, but also because of the pure anime energy of, do you know how much momentum you need to be able to kick someone that hard in the air? So yeah. But before we continue sounding like we didn't enjoy this movie and have nothing good to say about it, we should probably close on one thing that we unabashedly, childishly enjoyed about this movie, and we'll start with Jen. Is there anything about this movie that is still lodged in your brain as, this was very kick-ass and I'd like to see more of this in media overall?
I would say that I like the different themes. I like action films, I really do, but there were so few real good emotional beats that I didn't really like it that much, but I thought it was very satisfying in that the overall theme that they had come up with that actually went all the way through the movie came to a satisfying conclusion with the second Masked Rider. That I liked. I thought, and the fact that there were small story arcs with them. But overall, I'm just going to say this one wasn't really my jam, but I could appreciate the storytelling and where they got there. I'm sorry, I'm not abashedly liking this. I do.
All this means is that we need to find the part, the other thing in the franchise that you will enjoy. It just means
I loved Wire Fu growing up. I was, Kung Fu theater and such like that. Like, every Saturday did not miss it. But you also, I don't actually know how old each of you are, but I'm over 50 years old. So this was not my era either. So I'm from before the internet and after the internet. But I enjoyed it in certain ways, and I just think I like a little bit more nuanced storytelling.
Iori, what about you?
Because it's an Anno film, there are just some shots that are so beautifully composed. Just a lot of the camera framing in this are very, very choice.
I will take that back. There was one thing I really enjoyed. Butterfly Ogg's his mannerisms and his preciseness of moving and how he sat down and flipped his thing and crossed his leg and then flipped it again. He was gorgeous to watch. Just the actor was absolutely amazing. That I loved unabashedly.
Nice.
So, I'm sorry I interrupted you, but I was like, I
No
felt really
worries.
bad not being in love with something.
I like how we retained a lot of the design elements of the original Kamen Rider suit, particularly the exposed throat and the way Hongo's hair sticks out the bottom of his helmet. Because especially the exposed throat when he is armored everywhere else is this particular kind of vulnerability that is very visually appealing. Let's see. The scene at the train yard after, I think it's the end of the fight with Komori Bat-Og.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so my minor quibble with that is I see heat haze coming up off these tracks and you two are wearing those heavy coats? You must be dying. But the moment that Ludiko holds the coat out to Hongo, but doesn't step to give it to him halfway, instead she waits and makes him come into her space to get his coat, that is just such a gorgeous scene. Like, I love that. I love the symbolism of it, like, making the offer and then forcing him to commit to, yeah, I'm coming with you.
Mm.
That was really beautifully done. And then every scene that shows me the height difference between Hongo and Ichimonji, I adore it. Just my tall friend, my small friend.
I like that. I think for me, the thing that I adored the most about this, and part of the reason why I'm upset that Ruriko had to die in the movie in the first place, is one of the fundamental changes to this movie from the original series is because of the way Hongo is, like, introduced to this power. Ultimately, he kinda has, weirdly, the least emotional agency in the entire movie, to me, because he is willing to admit to Ruriko he's here because he doesn't know what the hell is going on, and is willing to trust Ruriko to tell him. So he's just a weapon of mass destruction that Ruriko points at things. And while that sounds like very weird and off-putting, especially for a hero, you'd imagine that a hero makes obviously heroic decisions. I kind of like this dynamic because he's willing to admit knowing so very little about Shaka and discovering that he's in this position after watching a man die try to save his life. He's willing to say all of the actual moral, heroic decisions that need to be made in order to get this work done, I am willing to trust someone else with it because I am ignorant. And you don't see men do that in a lot of media, and especially when they're deferring to women as a result. So I dug that a lot, and I would have loved to see more of that in another movie. But now we don't get to do that because Ruriko is dead.
I think, and so is Hongo. But, like, I think if we'd had more space to play, right? If this had been a TV reboot instead of a movie reboot, there would have been space for this gorgeous, complex, nuanced dynamic where Ludiko is essentially functioning as Hongo's handler.
Mm-hmm.
And I would have been so deeply, fairly, intensely into it.
And that's
that would have been rad.
The whole thing where it's the whole if you go out on your own, you will be miserable. But if you depend on those around you and become part of the society, you will thrive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I guess we will have to hope that when Anno makes his presumable sequel, if Toei ever tells him yes, that we will get something that at least gives us something that will fulfill these desires for us more deeply. But thank you so very much for joining us for this recording, Jennifer, and I would like to ask you two questions first and foremost.
Okay.
Before we close. The first being, all of your misgivings aside, are you willing to give this franchise a shot in the future after watching this movie?
Yeah, I mean, the two of you have basically told me that this franchise is getting better as it goes along. And while I was unsatisfied with many things, I was very intrigued or interested or satisfied with other parts of it. So yes, I would be happy to give the next one a shot and see if it continues. And I mean, I'm also actually kind of interested in, maybe evil Ruhr. How do you say her name?
Ludiko?
Ruriko. What if she goes evil because she's been turned into a digital? And then how do you save her? Do we use digital hongo to save her? That kind of thing. And that I'm interested. I can see this franchise going in very many different directions. And also the buddy between Hongo and Ichimonji. I can see that. That's interesting. It's the relationships of people that interest me and how they interact. So yes, that is your answer to that.
Nice. The next question is, you should let all of our listeners know who you are and where they can find more of your work. So this is an opportunity for you to promote yourself. What do you do?
Okay, well, my name's Jennifer Brozek. I have a website, jenniferbrozek.com. I write for Shadowrun. I write for Battletech. I write my own series. I just had my most recent Shadowrun novella, The Kilimanjaro Run, come out. You can find me also on Elron Arvin's Twitch stream, streaming with Brandon. This is how I know him, playing Eberron. Otherwise, I am on the various social medias under Jennifer Brozek, except for Instagram. It's Jennifer_Brozek, and it's mostly cats because I have many, and they make me happy, and so I take many pictures. But otherwise, if you like Shadowrun, if you like magic and cyberpunk, you'll like my Shadowrun. If you like big stumpy mechs in space, you'll like my Battletech. If you like the fact that I kill a lot of people fictionally, you'll like my original work. The Karen Wilson Chronicles, Last Days of Sultan Academy, stuff like that. So that's where you will find me. And I appreciate the invitation to come have a conversation with you two on this, especially since at Gen Con I was like, I have some feelings about this movie.
If there's anything I enjoy, it's bombarding someone with new Kamen Rider feelings. So I'm glad that you got to join us. This was rad. So yes, those were not even all of our feelings about this movie. But I'm very excited. I'm very glad that we got to have this chat. Things have gotten better since this. We have not had an episode for you all in quite some time, and you will hear us with some future stuff very, very soon.
We've had episodes. We do have a backlog of episodes. Whoopsie doodle.
Yes, and you will hear all of those lovely episodes very soon, including episodes in which we have more feelings about how this franchise treats women. But the last two series have been very good to women. Recently, Kamen Rider Geats, for all of its weirdness, is actually kind of hardcore. And Kamen Rider Gotchard is already in the first two episodes seeming to be my second favorite, and might actually beat Forze for my favorite if it does the right things. I highly doubt it. But it's there. So I'm very eager to have those conversations very, very soon when we get further in our own backlog and I actually start editing episodes. So look out for some very stern conversations about Kamen Rider Kiva very, very soon. But until next time,
be transformed
and stay righteous.
If you want to support this show, you can go to patreon.com/skiffyandfanty or skiffyandfanty.com, our website, where you can get access to all of our fancy things. Our music comes from Holy Mole. You can support him and his work at patreon.com/holymole. Thank you for listening.